Heyo, ladies and gentlemen, the schedule has been out for all of an hour and a half, and we are coming at you 12 hours later to give you our takes on the Vikings 2024 schedule. It's Jordan Hawthorne, it's Will Goodwin, it's Load the Box, the Minnesota Vikings show, the best Minnesota Vikings show available right now, if you ask my mother. Schedule's out. We've known who we were playing, where we were playing them. Now we know when we're playing them, and obviously, there's the flex and all that kind of stuff, which we can't really predict, so we're just going to look at the schedule. What not to expect? We're not going to go through and pick all these games. We have an idea of how many wins we're going to get to, and we're going to discuss that now. But first, before we do any of that, Will, your Timberwolves in shambles. Me, new Timberwolves fan, in shambles. How we feeling?
Not great, if I'm being honest. Not doomsday. I think the thing that is important to come back to is that the series is still 3-2. It's not 3-0 like it feels. It's not, it's not over. There is a benefit to winning those first two games, as distant a memory as it seems. So, the crazy thing is, you put together a good performance on your home floor like you've done all season, and you give yourself a chance in a game 7 where anything can happen, especially with Anthony Edwards. So it's a tall task. Jokic has been unbelievable, unguardable, but they beat him twice. They beat them 4 times this season. It's not a completely undoable task. It's tough.
And look, we're gonna really quickly. This is now Load the Box Timber. This is like I don't know basketball terms. So
pack the paint Timberwolves.
Yeah, pack the paint Timberwolves. Doesn't help that, and I don't know basketball rules as well as I know football rules, but I'm pretty sure if your feet are moving when you go to take a charge, that becomes a defensive foul. Am I correct in that?
That is correct.
Oh, that's crazy because I get that Gobert got away with elbowing somebody in the face, but doesn't mean that you have to then call 3 charges immediately after that whenever guys are clearly still moving their feet. I don't know. This, like I said, this is a football show. We have went through, and again, not with much thought put into it, and we're going to have a good discussion, I think, right now about this, but we've both went through and looked at the schedule and counted wins, and, don't call us idiots if the Vikings win less or more games than what we're about to say, but I look at the schedule and I see 6 to 7 wins. And there's reasoning behind that we're about to get into. Before we get into that, I will let you kick off this conversation, as well as telling us how many wins you think you see on this schedule as of May.
Yeah, I think it's really interesting, and we were talking about this before we went live, that the win total is so unknown because the quarterback situation is so unknown. I think, we've talked about it a lot, and we'll talk about it a lot more in the coming months. We think this defense is awesome. I think not that they're necessarily going to be top 5, but I think this is a defense that has the ability to be top 10. Is going to keep you in a lot of games. So I think with that element, you can look at the schedule and have some hope that there's some of these maybe go either way games can go your way. But when you have no idea what you're getting from the quarterback position, and even if we kind of know it's going to be Sam Darnold, we don't really know what we're going to get from him. It's just a whole lot of question marks for the first time since Kirk Cousins arrived in 2018, when we didn't 100% know what we were getting from Kirk Cousins, but we had a pretty good idea. And you had a baseline of this is the worst that could happen, and it was about 7 wins was about the worst that could happen. With this Vikings team, I don't know. I mean, I could see a range from 5 to 10 wins and not being terribly surprised either way.
Yeah.
Because I mean we can agree we've seen teams that have awesome defenses be bad. You don't just automatically become a good team if you have a good defense. So I don't know. It's I think 6 to 7 is probably fair, especially with all the unknowns.
I think it's easy to look at a schedule in May, at the schedule release, the night of the schedule release. And I think you go one of two directions. You either are looking at it with the, oh my gosh, this is the team of destiny eyes, that it feels like a lot of fans look at their teams with. I'll never forget, I think it was Mike Florio said a few years ago, like, every fan thinks their team is a Super Bowl contender after the draft. Like, they think they have just drafted the guy that's going to be a franchise changer. And then, like, 20 of the teams find out, oh, wait, this guy's not who we thought he was going to be. And that's kind of how the draft works. The other direction, and it's the way I tend to lean, is like, I'm very excited about the Vikings draft picks, and I'm very excited about the free agency we just had. But I also buy into hype for other teams too. And so, like, Chicago just took Caleb Williams and Rome Odunze, and they signed Keenan Allen. And so, like, I'm terrified of Chicago right now. I would love to be wrong, but, like, if I'm just looking through the same, purple-colored glasses, but I switch it out for, orange and blue, or blue and gray, or green and yellow, like, yeah, the division got better as well, and every team thinks that they got better this offseason. So looking at this,
Yep.
And again, we're not going to go game by game, but with an early bye week, I don't know that favors the Vikings, team. Now, granted, we are like a younger team. I think that's been something that Kwesi has done since he's been here, is he's gotten these older guys off the team and brought in a lot of young talent, replaced Daniel Hunter with Grenard. So maybe the bye week doesn't matter as much because these guys are just, young and full of energy and stuff. But I don't know, man. I'm just pessimistic about the schedule, as we sit right now. Here's a question that I want to, do you see a stretch on this schedule where it's like, it's JJ McCarthy time? Because I don't think the Vikings know when JJ McCarthy time is. It might be 2025. It might be because of an injury, obviously. But do you see a stretch on here where you're like, seems like this would be a good time to make the switch, let him get X amount of games in?
I think it could go one of two ways. I think it could go week 7 right after the bye. I think that's aggressive, and I wouldn't necessarily advocate for that. But what I could see happening is, Vikings go 1-4 in the first 5. That first 5 isn't impossible, but it's also difficult. You got San Francisco and Houston at home, the Giants and the Packers on the road, and then you go to London to face the Jets right before the bye week. None of those teams are necessarily the Chiefs, but the Niners will be difficult like always. Houston's going to be good. We know the Packers are formidable. You don't really know what you're getting with the Jets, but you would imagine better than last year, and it's also Aaron Rodgers, and you can imagine that team will be better than they were last year. So let's just say things go really bad those first 5 weeks, and you come home, you get that aforementioned bye, and honestly, I think a note about that bye, I remember in 2022, Kevin O'Connell said that he wanted to come home and just play immediately. He didn't want to take the week off after the London trip. He didn't want to have that early of a bye. Part of that could have been because, like you said, veteran-laden team. This team's going to have more young pieces. Maybe Kevin looks at that and says, I am not as confident in my team's ability to bounce back immediately from an international trip. Take the bye now. And the reason I say that is because if I remembered correctly from 2022, the league gives those international traveling teams a choice. Do you want your bye immediately following the trip or not? Oftentimes they take it right away. The Vikings didn't in 2022, and I would imagine Kevin said, yeah, young team, let's take it now.
Yeah.
But anyways, back to your original question. So I could see week 7 at home against Detroit. Not that you want to face a team like Detroit in your first start, but I don't think Detroit's defense is necessarily the Niners defense or the 85 Bears. So give your guy a shot, play against the team where he played his college ball. If the season sort of feels like it's already gone off the rails. Otherwise, I would maybe look to. I mean, know what would be fun? Week 14 at home against Atlanta.
Oh no.
Again, if things haven't gone great, if the season's sort of out of your hands, let's say you're what's that? What would the record be? Let's say you're like 4-8 or something. Season's kind of over. Why not? Why not give your guy a shot the last 5 weeks and let him go against the guy that you traded, and replaced him with? So, um, anyways, I don't know. What are your thoughts? Do you have
I
a sort of like JJ McCarthy target?
I don't think it will be after the bye week, although that makes sense. I don't think they will throw him in against Detroit because he has skinny legs and Detroit's known to take people's knees out. And legitimately, I just don't think that they will do it against a division rival because that's like feel like all eyes on that, especially Detroit, who's like the favored to win the division, and they just had this NFC Championship game run. So I was looking at it and I was like, oh, that Rams game kind of seems like a good target, but that's a short week game. That's on Thursday Night Football. So I think where it lines up perfectly for me is what would that be? It would be like week 9 against Indianapolis. It's a home game. It's against a team in the Colts that I don't think is really known for having this ferocious, nasty defense. And also it's coming off of like that mini bye Thursday Night Football.
Yep.
So he would have a little bit of extra time to get in. And then you just look at the stretch that he would have over the first month. It would be Indy, Jacksonville, Tennessee, and then Chicago. And 3 of those are on the road. But he'd get his first start at home, and then he'd go on the road to play 2 other AFC South teams, none of which are renowned for their defense. And he really, I don't think, would be truly tested by an elite defense until he got to Chicago. And Chicago last season, their defense, like their team wasn't good and then they got good late. So if they do that same thing, their defense could be on the up and up right now. But Chicago is still very much a mystery to me. So I think the Indianapolis game in week 9 or 10, I don't know which one it is. My schedule that I'm looking at doesn't have it. I'm looking at the Twitter release that they like, just the picture they put on Twitter.
It's 9.
Yeah. So in week 9, I think that would be a good time to throw JJ McCarthy in there. But, again, and this is something that I think is crucial to bring up. I don't think the Vikings know right now. They've seen him throw a couple of times with no pads. They've done their homework on him. And, it really could come down to like, how serious are they about, that comment Kwesi made about they want to play competitive football. Like they never want to play a non-competitive game. What if Sam Darnold looks really bad? Like he looks like the Jets version of Sam Darnold going into that, the bye week basically, like you said, and then maybe it is you can't say like, oh well, we're going with Mullins, like because you just drafted a guy in the top 10. Like he has to be the backup. He has to be the second option. So it'll be interesting. It'll be interesting with the JJ McCarthy talkers. I want to talk about the Atlanta game because that's obviously pressing, and I don't know who makes the schedule and what networks were vying. Maybe we don't hold as much weight as we think we do as Vikings fans, but man, the Vikings Atlanta game felt like it was a lock to be a primetime game, or at least like America's Game of the Week on Fox or something. And no, it is a noon game in the beginning of December. Thoughts?
It's just kind of lame.
Yeah.
Like, I understand, like, because that's the exact same thing that happened when the Vikings went back to Washington with Cousins 2 years ago. But that's different in the sense that it was 5 years after he left the Washington franchise, and like those ties were never great to begin with. Like, this is different in that it's like Kirk loved Minnesota. He said multiple times he wanted to retire here. The Vikings loved him. The match was just not good timing wise, basically. And it would be just poetic to have it be, I mean, heck, put it on Monday night to open the season. You know what I mean? Like,
yeah, there's like 2 Monday night games.
I don't know.
The season.
There's just, and not that like, I don't know. I think maybe what I am seeing with this whole schedule release, and a big takeaway I had is now that Kirk Cousins is gone and the Vikings are deemed non-competitive by the national media and the league at large, they just don't get primetime games anymore.
Yeah.
They they got their required ones in the Thursday night one and the Monday night one. And honestly, I guess I'm not even entirely sure that those are required anymore, but basically sort of like the check the box, like, yeah, we gave you a primetime game, congrats. But 12 games starting at noon. Like 12 games starting at noon, two at prime time, and then you got the international one starting at 8:30 in the morning. But it's just sort of lame. Like I remember, I mean, Russell Wilson goes back to Seattle. That's a Monday night game, week 2, I think. Maybe it was week 1. Um, this was especially with how Kirk Cousins has become a media darling. ESPN loves him. He's on like the Monday night Eli and Peyton thing like every year now it seems,
Yeah.
and he was on the schedule release show tonight. He was talking with Dan Orlovsky and the guys, and it's just kind of like seems like a no brainer for ESPN to raise their hand and say, yeah, we'll take you. For Monday night against the Vikings. I mean, they got the Falcons Monday night against the Eagles and I think one other one. So sort of strange. I guess to me that tells me that the league does not think very highly of the Vikings this year.
Yeah, I think that's kind of what I got as well, but like I don't I look at it as because I think that is in flex territory. Although the flex does not get used as much as I think people think it does. Like I feel like I always think like, yeah, every week they're flexing games and like, oh, they're definitely gonna flex this Vikings Bengals game or something, and it's like, no, like they have no interest. You know, both teams are in the playoffs right now, but they're not moving it. And I don't know like what all goes into it. Maybe there's money involved or something, but I think they put it late in the season because it is more enticing if McCarthy is stouting for the Vikings at this point than if
Yeah.
you know it's Sam Darnold, because then there is like it's the old guy versus the new guy. But like Atlanta has like the easiest strength of one of the easiest strengths of schedule
Yep.
in the league, and they just added Kirk Cousins, who immediately gives you like a 7 to 8 game like basement of expectations.
Mm-hmm.
Not to mention, you know, what he's going to get out of guys like Drake London and Kyle Pitts and Bijan Robinson, you know, how he's going to factor into the offense. So, like, I think Atlanta is actually kind of an exciting regular season team, especially in kind of a weak division. So they're going to have a decent record. And so, like, it just felt like a no-brainer to, like, chuck that one, flip that in the Rams game and just say, like, there you go. Like that,
Yeah.
It's in prime time. It's a short week. Nobody cares. Like, there you go. You have it. It just surprised me a lot that they're not playing into that, but especially with the tampering and things like that. And like, you know, I feel like it was covered pretty heavily in the national media about like Kwesi. You know, Kwesi said he wants Kirk Cousins back, but it's a business. And Kirk Cousins said, you know, he wants to be a Viking. And oh my gosh, he shocked everybody and went to it. Like, I feel like that story was so prevalent in the national media. But I don't know. Again, maybe we just think too highly of ourselves. Are we good on?
I mean, I don't think we do think that too highly of ourselves in this regard. I think Kirk Cousins has got a lot of media attention over the last 2.5 years, and national media attention.
Yeah.
And a lot of that came when he was a member of the Minnesota Vikings. And so it's a little strange. Like, it just seems sort of a little bit of a zag from everything that, you know, had been going on with the whole Kirk Cousins narrative. And I mean, yeah, to your point, the Falcons could be in a position where they're 8-4 and the Vikings are 4-8, and that game is super lame. You know, it's just kind of like, well, cool. Like, you know, week 14, we buried this at the end of the schedule. I don't know.
But even like if it was, I don't know. Like I would take a chance if I was a network, and you know I don't work for a network, so who knows what algorithms and you know how they factor in what games to get. But like, I would think I want the Falcons and I want the Vikings. I want it late in the season. Like not late enough where, you know, like obviously late in the season is for like the division games and playoff race and stuff. But I want it late in like where it's at basically. I want it in December, and I want it in prime time because I'm going to take a chance that it's going to be McCarthy, which you could be, the Vikings could have one win when JJ McCarthy steps on the field. That immediately makes them interesting because they just put a top 10 draft pick just into the playing field. Like, that immediately changes the narrative about the team. Versus, oh, well, they have Sam Darnold, who cares? And so I would have taken a chance on it, but I don't know. This is a question that I have because the Vikings do finish up the season. The last month of football is going to be very, very important. 3 divisional games out of the last 4 games. Home against Chicago. I didn't go through the schedule. I'm not going to. I'm not going to go through the entire schedule because, you
can find it on the internet.
It is so accessible, ladies and gentlemen. It is just Google it, and there's 50 articles. There's already people who have predicted a Super Bowl. I guarantee it. It's easy to find. But in case you're wondering, it's home against Chicago, and then there's a little division break in Seattle for an afternoon game, a 3:05 game, and then home against Green Bay, away against Detroit on a date and time to be determined. So, do you think it's gonna matter for the Vikings that they have these games? Do you think we will come out of that Atlanta game thinking if we can go 3-1 in these last 4, there's a chance for the wild card, maybe there's a chance for the division? Or do you think the Vikings will be at a point by the last home stretch of the season in mid to late December where it's yeah, okay, so we're just playing spoiler for the other teams in the division? Do you expect the Vikings to be down and out by this point?
I don't. I think largely based on what you said, it's very important to this regime, this franchise, frankly, to be competitive. And it irks a portion of the fan base that would prefer we just kind of suck for a few years and then load up on draft picks and go for it. But the Vikings will probably be in that, finish the season 7, 8, 9, 10 wins. It's just kind of where they end up finishing. And so I could see a situation where those last 4 games do matter. I do think it is going to be very much predicated on what they do in the division games leading up to that. You and I have talked a lot about how you often split in the division. You can kind of just predict, you're going to split in the division, and then you take the remaining 11 games, and, how you do in those is the most important thing.
Yeah.
But I don't know if this season is necessarily that, because yes, you could split in the division, but we talked about this division's tougher. And so if you go 0-3 in the division to start, you got two road games in the division. Just you lose at Green Bay, you lose at Chicago. Detroit's tough no matter where you play them. If you're 0-3 in the division heading into those last 4 games, they won't matter. So I think it's going to be really important how those first 3 division games go.
Yeah, no, I think that's definitely it, like you said, and I when we do an actual, which this will be when training camp starts type content.
Yeah, how about August?
Yeah, I think that sounds even better. That will be when we do an actual, pick 'em, and we'll go through every game and we'll give, when we win, when we lose, that kind of stuff. But I do typically say we're going to split with the division, and anything better than that, then we're a really good team, because really good teams go positive in their division, and anything worse than that, we must not be a very good team, because not very good teams typically go sub 500 in their division. So I agree with you. I think the Vikings, and this is a little bit of a teaser for 2-3 months from now, whenever we're predicting the schedule, but I think they will win 2 of those divisional games at least in that last stretch of the season, and we'll see how important that ends up being, and also we'll see who the quarterback will be. Do you have anything else on this schedule that jumps out at you that you want that needs to be discussed tonight?
One game is week 3 against Houston, just because it's Danielle Hunter returning and Stephon Diggs returning. So a little bit of a reunion game there. I also think it's neat and just well-timed that both those reunion games are at home. A lot, just better sentiment, when they're at home rather than on the road. The other just weird thing that I noticed about the schedule, Weeks 10 through 12 are all on the road, and then weeks 13 through 15 are all at home. So 3 straight road games followed by 3 straight home games. Just kind of strange. You rarely see 3 straight of one, rather
Yeah.
in the season, and then let alone 2 straight stretches of 3 road, 3 home. Um, Seems like the AI algorithm got a little bit messed up there at some point, but um, yeah, I don't know what to make of that. I don't know if you read into that at all. It just seems a little bit strange.
Yeah, I can never get like a read on it. It is, I will say this, it the Vikings have opened at home a lot lately. And so
Mhm.
opening on the road, and I don't think this is true because I know it's not true. Let me start with that. But the last away like opener I can think of was the Titans in like 2016, which I know that we've had an away opener since 2016. But that's the last one that I can think of, and I did not have high expectations going into that season. And then the defense looked so good for the first 5 weeks of that season that I thought we were going to a Super Bowl, and then we went 3-8 down the stretch. So temper your expectations. I don't know. It's just exciting, and the NFL is doing a really good job of keeping me on the line this year. These will be my final thoughts, and then I'll let you take us home. The NFL is doing a really good job. Maybe it's because we drafted J.J. McCarthy and we drafted Dallas Tono. Like, it's got me super amped for this upcoming season. But typically by now, I'm all in on the NBA. I don't really care about football that much. I am tuned out. I'm on my golf game. I'm on the Reds. I'm on anything else. Dungeons and Dragons, like anything else, but football's the last thing on my mind. I cannot get enough. I'm listening to Pro Football Talk, and I'm listening to like First Things First whenever they talk about football. Like, I'm listening to trying to get just all the football content I can. I watched a video the other day. It was every pass JJ McCarthy threw last season at Michigan. Everyone, incompletions and everything. And it was only like 45 minutes long. Michael Penix's same video was like an hour and 45 minutes long. So that shows you how much, running the ball that Michigan did. But yeah, man, I'm just so amped. I hate that it's only the middle of May. I want it to be July. I want it to be the training camp, and I have a countdown on a whiteboard at my job to when this goes live, 77 days until the Hall of Fame preseason game. That's we'll get I'm just amped, I'm jacked, and the schedule release is always fun. And of course, it's always fun to come on here and talk with with one of the better football minds, in my opinion, in Mr. Will Goodwin, about our favorite football team. So yeah, man, I'll kick it back to you. Make sure you shop Unified. Follow the show at LTB Vikings. Check out Will's Twitter at Will Badlose. And follow the show, subscribe, all that stuff, on YouTube and Spotify or wherever you get your podcasts, that kind of stuff. I've been Jordan Hawthorne. Will, feel free to take us home.
Just 2 little random tidbits on the schedule for my final thoughts. We are playing the Bears on Monday night again. It seems to happen every single year. And our other primetime game is at the Rams, which the last time the Vikings played at the Rams was 2018. Also, Thursday night football. That was back at the LA Coliseum instead of SoFi Stadium now. But
Didn't you go
2
to
little
that game?
random tidbits there. What's that?
Didn't you go to that game in LA?
No.
Who went to that game? Someone that wrote that writes at Vikings territory, like that's in the group chat thing. They went to that game, and I don't know why I thought it was you, but I don't remember who it was. It doesn't matter.
I was my nephew was actually born that day, so I was at the hospital that evening.
Very fun.
So I was not at the LA Coliseum. That's why I remember that day so well, is because my nephew and godson was born that night. So I showed up at the hotel and met him, and then as I was leaving, my brother and his wife were turning on the Vikings. So very yeah, very weird, sort of like stuck memory in my mind after all that.
There's no chance that there's going to be another like Goodwin baby bone this time on Thursday night, is there?
I don't think so, unless there's some relatives that haven't told me anything. Not
the
from this Goodwin household, at
yeah,
least.
yeah. The comedic timing of our internets was perfect there because you started like saying and then like you cut out, and I was like, oh my god, did he just leave? Did did I just like uncover
I'm
something?
out.
Like, yeah. Sorry, I'm interrupting your final thought.
Not announcing a pregnancy on my podcast. That's how we'll end. We'll be back soon. I think Jordan and I want to dig into JJ McCarthy a little bit more, talk about expectations for him, whether he plays or not this season. So tune in next time. This was Load the Box. Skol, y'all.